I was scrolling through Instagram at 11 o'clock on a Tuesday night when I saw it. My son Samuel was wearing a tuxedo. Standing next to him was Mandy Baker in a wedding dress. They were married, and I was finding out through a carousel of photos posted by Mandy's cousin. I zoomed in on every single picture, searching desperately for myself in the crowd. There were at least 200 guests. I could see Mandy's parents, her entire family, but I wasn't there. I wasn't invited to my own son's wedding. The son I raised alone. The son I sacrificed everything for. And when I realized what he had done, I made a decision that would change both our lives forever. My hands started shaking so badly I nearly dropped my phone. I sat there in my small one-bedroom apartment, the same apartment I had lived in for 26 years, and I tried to understand what had just happened. The same apartment where I raised Samuel alone, after his father Jose died. The same apartment where I worked myself to exhaustion at 3 different jobs so my son could have a future. I called him immediately. It went to voicemail. I called again. Voicemail. I called a third time. Nothing. I went through all 15 photos again, and again, and again. In one photo, Samuel was dancing with Mandy's mother. His hand was on her shoulder, and they were both smiling like they had known each other forever. In another, he was cutting a massive 3-tier cake with Mandy, their hands wrapped together around the knife. There was one of him toasting with champagne, surrounded by men in expensive suits who I had never seen before in my life. Every photo felt like a knife twisting deeper into my chest. I looked at the photos one more time. I studied Samuel's face in each one. He looked happy, genuinely happy. There was no sadness in his eyes, no guilt, no hesitation. He looked like a man on the best day of his life. And I wasn't there. I looked at my phone again. Samuel still hadn't called me back. It had been an hour since I first saw the photos, an hour since my entire world collapsed, and my son couldn't even bother to pick up the phone. I sat there in the dark, phone still in my hand, and I realized something that made my stomach turn. This wasn't an accident, this wasn't a mistake or an oversight, this was a choice. Samuel chose to get married without me. He chose to let me find out this way. He chose to exclude me, and that choice told me everything I needed to know about who my son had become. Let me tell you how I got here. Let me tell you about the boy I raised and the man he became. Because this story didn't start with wedding photos on Instagram. It started 26 years ago, when I became a widow at 41 years old, with a 2-year-old son and no one to help me. My husband, Jose, died of a sudden heart attack. Samuel was only 2. I was working as a receptionist, barely making enough to cover rent. I had no family nearby. My parents had passed years earlier. Jose's family blamed me for his death. They said I stressed him out. They disappeared right after the funeral. So it was just me and Samuel, just us against the world. I took on a second job cleaning offices at night. Then a third job on weekends doing laundry for a nursing home. I would come home at 2 in the morning, smelling like bleach and industrial detergent, and I would check on Samuel sleeping in his bed, and I would think this is worth it. Every aching muscle, every missed hour of sleep, every birthday I spent working instead of celebrating. It was all worth it because I was building something. I was building his future. When Samuel got into high school, he was brilliant. Straight A's. His teacher said he could go to any college he wanted. But college costs money. A lot of money. So I started picking up extra shifts. I sold my mother's pearl necklace. It was the only thing of value I owned. I sold my wedding ring. I stopped buying new clothes for myself. I wore the same 3 outfits to work on rotation, and I told myself it didn't matter because Samuel was going to make it. And he did. He got a full scholarship to a prestigious university. I cried when we got that acceptance letter. I cried so hard that Samuel had to bring me water and tell me to breathe. I thought I had done it. I thought I'd given my son the life he deserved. But here's what I didn't know then. Here's what I couldn't see coming. Sometimes the people you sacrifice everything for forget what you gave up. And sometimes they decide that the person who lifted them up doesn't belong in the life they built. If you've ever felt invisible to someone you loved, if you've ever been left out by the people who were supposed to include you, hit that subscribe button. Because what I did next shocked everyone who knew me. And trust me, you're going to want to see how this ends. Now let me ask you something. Have you ever had someone close to you deliberately exclude you from an important event? Drop your answer in the comments because I want to know if I'm the only one who's been through something like this. The walls seemed closer that night. The silence was deafening. I could hear the refrigerator humming in the kitchen. I could hear my neighbor's television through the thin walls. I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. How did I get here? How did I end up finding out about my own son's wedding through Instagram at 11 o'clock at night? My mind kept going back to the beginning, to when Jose died 26 years ago and left me alone with a 2-year-old boy. To all those years I worked 3 jobs. To every sacrifice I made, every single thing I gave up so Samuel could have more than I ever had. I thought about coming home at 2 in the morning with my hands cracked and bleeding from cleaning chemicals. I thought about skipping meals so Samuel could have seconds. I thought about wearing shoes with holes in them because new shoes for him were more important. I thought about every birthday, every holiday, every moment I spent working instead of resting because his future mattered more than my comfort. And for what? So he could stand in a vineyard wearing a tuxedo I didn't buy, marrying a woman in front of 200 people, and I wasn't worth a phone call? I wasn't worth an invitation. I wasn't even worth the truth. Everyone in those photos looked like they belonged in a magazine. Everyone looked wealthy, polished, sophisticated. And I understood something in that moment that made my chest feel like it was caving in. I wasn't at that wedding because I didn't fit into that picture. I didn't fit into my son's new life. When did my son become someone who gets married without telling his mother? When did I become someone he could just erase from the most important day of his life? When Jose died, Samuel was only 2 years old. I was 41. I remember the morning it happened like it was yesterday. Jose kissed me goodbye before work, said he had a meeting with a client. 3 hours later, I got the call from the hospital. Massive heart attack. He was gone before the ambulance even arrived. I was working as a receptionist at a dental office, making barely enough to cover rent and groceries. When Jose died, that income died with him. His life insurance policy was small, enough to cover the funeral and maybe 2 months of expenses. That was it. I thought Jose's family would help. His mother, his brothers, someone. But at the funeral, Jose's mother looked at me with cold eyes and said I had stressed him out. Said all my worrying about money, all my complaining about bills, that's what killed her son. His brothers nodded along. They left right after the burial. I never heard from them again. So there I was, 41 years old, a widow, a single mother to a toddler who kept asking when Daddy was coming home. No family, no support, no one. Just me and Samuel against the world. The receptionist job wasn't enough. It was never going to be enough. So I took on a second job cleaning offices at night. I'd finish at the dental office at 5, pick Samuel up from daycare, feed him dinner, put him to bed, and then I'd head out at 9 o'clock to clean office buildings until 2 in the morning. I'd come home exhausted. My hands smelled like bleach no matter how many times I washed them. My knees ached from being on the floor scrubbing. My back screamed every time I bent down to pick up Samuel. But it still wasn't enough. So I took on a third job, weekends doing laundry for a nursing home. I'd work Saturdays and Sundays, 8 hours each day, washing and folding sheets that smelled like urine and antiseptic. Samuel would stay with a neighbor, a kind older woman who charged me $20 a weekend. $20 I could barely afford, but I had no choice. I worked through every birthday, every holiday, every single day that other mothers were celebrating with their children. I was working. Christmas morning, I worked a 4-hour shift at the nursing home and came home to watch Samuel open his presents before I had to leave again for the evening cleaning shift. My birthday? Just another work day. Samuel's birthday? I'd buy him a cake from the discount bakery and sing to him before rushing off to work. When Samuel was 7, My mother's pearl necklace was sitting in my jewelry box. It was the only thing of value I owned. My mother had given it to me on my wedding day. It was supposed to be an heirloom, something to pass down to Samuel's wife someday. I took it to a pawn shop and got $400 for it. That money paid for Samuel's school supplies and new shoes for the year. When he was 9, I sold my wedding ring. The gold band, Jose, had slipped on my finger 20 years earlier. I got $350. That money went toward fixing our car when the transmission died. I needed that car to get to all 3 jobs. I wore the same 3 outfits on rotation for years. A black pair of pants and 2 different colored shirts for the receptionist job. I'd wash them by hand in the sink every other night because I couldn't afford to waste quarters at the laundromat. People at work noticed. I could see them looking at me, whispering. But I didn't care. Samuel had new clothes every school year. That's what mattered. I went without so he could have more. I skipped meals so he could have seconds. I wore shoes with holes in the soles because new shoes for him were more important. I kept the heat low in winter and wore layers of sweaters so the heating bill wouldn't go up. Everything I did, every choice I made, was for Samuel's future. And then high school came, and I saw that it was all paying off. Samuel was brilliant, straight A's in every class. His teachers called me in for conferences, and they all said the same thing. Mrs. Matz, your son is exceptional. He can go to any college he wants. Any college. Those words made my heart soar and sink at the same time. Because college costs money. A lot of money. So I picked up more hours. The dental office let me work through lunch for an extra hour of pay each day. I took on extra buildings to clean at night. I started doing laundry for the nursing home on weekday evenings too. Just a few hours, whatever I could fit in. My body was breaking down. I was 56 years old, and I felt 70. My hands had permanent cracks in them from the cleaning chemicals. My knees could barely hold me up some days. I was exhausted all the time. But Samuel was going to go to college. I was going to make sure of it. And then the letter came. Full scholarship to a prestigious university. Full ride. Tuition, room, board, everything covered. Samuel opened the envelope and screamed. I grabbed it from his hands and read it 3 times to make sure it was real. I cried. I cried so hard I couldn't breathe. Samuel had to bring me a glass of water and tell me to calm down. He was laughing and crying too. He wrapped his arms around me and said, "Mom, we did it. We actually did it. We did it." Those words meant everything to me. The first 2 years of college, Samuel came home every holiday. Every Thanksgiving, every Christmas, every spring break. He'd walk through the door of our little apartment and hug me and tell me about his classes, his professors, his new friends. We'd sit on the old couch and eat takeout pizza, and he'd show me his grades. All A's, always A's. I was so proud I thought my chest would burst. But then junior year came, and something shifted. He came home for Thanksgiving but left 2 days early. Said he had a big project due. Christmas, he stayed for only 3 days. Spring break, he didn't come home at all. Said he was going on a trip with friends. Friends. He talked about his friends differently now. Before, it was, my roommate Jake, or this girl in my study group. Now it was my friend whose dad owns a hedge fund, or this guy whose family has a place in Aspen. He talked about spring break trips to beach houses and summer internships at companies I'd never heard of. I noticed he stopped mentioning our apartment. When I'd ask him about his friends, he'd tell me their names and what they studied, but he never talked about where he was from anymore. Before he'd say, "Yeah, my mom raised me in this small town. It was just us." Now, when his friends would ask about home, he'd say the name of our town and change the subject. I told myself it was normal. He was growing up, finding his place in a new world. I was happy for him. This was what I wanted, wasn't it? For him to have opportunities I never had. But deep down something felt wrong. Then came Christmas of his senior year. Samuel called me 2 weeks before the holiday and said, "Mom, I'm bringing someone home. Her name is Mandy. Mandy Baker. She's my girlfriend." A girlfriend. My Samuel had a girlfriend. I was thrilled. I deep cleaned the apartment, I baked cookies. I bought a small fake Christmas tree from the discount store and decorated it. I wanted everything to be perfect. They arrived 2 days before Christmas. Mandy stepped out of Samuel's car and I saw her for the first time. She was beautiful. Long blonde hair, expensive-looking coat, designer purse. She smiled at me, a polite smile, and shook my hand. "Mrs. Matz, it's so nice to finally meet you," she said. Her voice was smooth, practiced, like she'd rehearsed the line. Come in," I said, ushering them inside. I made cookies. And hot chocolate. They came into the apartment and I watched Mandy's eyes scan everything. The water stain on the ceiling from when the upstairs neighbor's pipe burst 3 years ago. The secondhand couch with the worn cushions. The small TV on a folding table. The photos in cheap plastic frames on the wall. She didn't say anything, but I saw it. The way her smile got tighter. The way she stood a little straighter, like she was trying not to touch anything. We sat down and I served the cookies I'd spent hours making. Chocolate chip, Samuel's favorite. Mandy took one and nibbled the edge but barely ate any of it. She placed it back on her napkin and folded her hands in her lap. Samuel was quiet. He kept looking between me and Mandy, like he was waiting for something to happen. I asked Mandy about school. She told me she was studying business. I asked about her family. She said her father was a lawyer, her mother was on several charity boards. I asked where she was from. She named a town I'd never heard of, then added, "It's near the Hamptons." The Hamptons. I'd seen that place on TV. Mansions and yachts and people who summered as a verb. After an hour, they said they were tired from the drive and went to get settled. Samuel had said they'd stay at a hotel, which was fine with me. The apartment was too small anyway. Before they left, Mandy smiled at me again. "You have such a cozy little place, Mrs. Matz. And you're so sweet." Sweet. That word sat in my stomach like a stone. After they left, I cleaned up the cookies she barely touched. I washed the mugs. I stood in my kitchen and I felt something I'd never felt before when it came to Samuel. Shame. Not shame of myself. Shame that my son was ashamed of me. The next 2 days, they came by for a few hours each day. Mandy was polite but distant. She asked me surface-level questions, but never anything real. Samuel barely spoke unless spoken to. On Christmas morning, they stopped by for an hour, opened gifts and left to have dinner with Mandy's family who was staying at some resort an hour away. "You're welcome to come, Mom," Samuel said, but I could hear in his voice that he didn't mean it. No, you go have fun with Mandy's family," I said. I spent Christmas alone in my apartment eating leftover ham and watching TV. After they left, I sat on my couch and I replayed every moment of their visit. The way Mandy looked at my apartment, the way Samuel went quiet whenever I talked about his childhood, the way he rushed them out the door each day like he couldn't wait to leave. And I realized something that broke my heart. My son was embarrassed of me, of where he came from, of the life I'd given everything to provide for him. I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself I was imagining things. But deep down, I knew the truth. Samuel was leaving me behind, and he was taking my heart with him. Samuel's graduation was in May. I took the day off from all 3 jobs to be there. That cost me nearly $300 in lost wages, but I didn't care. My son was graduating from college with honors. I wouldn't have missed it for anything. I wore the nicest dress I owned. I'd bought it from a thrift store 2 years earlier for $15 and spent hours mending a small tear in the hem. I paired it with shoes I'd polished until they shined. I looked at myself in the mirror that morning and I thought I looked presentable. I thought I looked like I belonged. I was wrong. The ceremony was beautiful. I watched Samuel walk across that stage and accept his diploma, and I cried. I was so proud of him. So incredibly proud. This was it. This was the moment all those years of sacrifice had been building toward. After the ceremony, Samuel found me in the crowd. He hugged me and I held on to him, maybe a little too long. Then Mandy appeared with her parents. "Mom, these are Mandy's parents. Robert and Margaret Baker." Robert Baker was tall, silver-haired, wearing a suit that probably cost more than I made in 3 months. He extended his hand, and I shook it. His grip was firm, almost aggressive. But he didn't look at me. He looked through me, like I was a window he was trying to see past. Margaret Baker was impeccably dressed in cream-colored silk. Her blonde hair was perfect. Her makeup was flawless. She smiled at me, a practiced smile, and air kissed near my cheek without actually touching me. "Mrs. Matz, lovely to meet you," she said. "Please call me Cecile," I said. Her smile flickered. Just for a second, like she'd tasted something sour. Robert insisted on taking us all to dinner to celebrate. "I know a great place nearby," he said. "Best restaurant in town." We went. The moment we walked in, I knew I was out of my depth. White tablecloths, crystal glasses, waiters in suits. I picked up the menu and my heart sank. The cheapest entree was $45. $45. I did the math in my head. That was 6 hours of cleaning offices. That was an entire day's wages from the nursing home. "Order anything you want," Robert said, waving his hand dismissively. My treat. I ordered the cheapest thing on the menu anyway. Some kind of chicken dish. I couldn't even enjoy it because I was too anxious about the cost. They talked about Samuel's future. Robert leaned back in his chair, swirling his wine, and said, "So Samuel? Law school. Have you given any more thought to which programs you're applying to?" Samuel nodded. "I'm looking at Columbia, NYU, maybe Georgetown." "Columbia is excellent," Robert said. "I have connections there. I can make some calls, write you a recommendation. With your grades you'll get in no problem." Margaret chimed in. "You'll need to network this summer. We have the house in the Hamptons. You should spend some time there, meet the right people. It's all about connections in this business." The right people. I sat there, cutting my $45 chicken into tiny pieces, and I listened to them build Samuel's future. Law school. The Hamptons. Connections. Networking. Not once did anyone ask me what I thought. Not once did anyone acknowledge that I'd spent 26 years building the foundation that made this moment possible. I realized something sitting at that table. They were building a future for Samuel, a future in their world, a world where I didn't exist. And Samuel was letting them. Samuel got into Columbia Law School 6 months later, top 10 in the country. I was ecstatic. Columbia was in New York City, just 3 hours away. We could see each other. I could visit, maybe take the train up on my day off, but we didn't see each other. Law school was demanding, Samuel said. He was busy. He had so much reading to do, so many papers to write. "I'll come home soon, Mom," he'd say. "I promise." But he didn't. The phone calls that used to be an hour long became 30 minutes, then 20, then 10, then just text messages. "Can't talk, studying for exams. In the library all day. Too much work right now." He stopped coming home for holidays. "Thanksgiving? Too much work, Mom. I'll come at Christmas." "Christmas? Actually, Mandy's family invited me to Aspen. I'll come for New Year's." New Year's? Silence. But I saw him on Facebook. I saw the photos Mandy posted. Mandy and Samuel at some charity gala, Samuel in a tuxedo I didn't buy. Mandy and Samuel on a yacht with people I didn't recognize. Mandy and Samuel at fundraisers and society events, smiling, looking like they belonged in magazines. Samuel was wearing expensive suits now, designer clothes. He'd post photos from fancy restaurants and upscale bars. He looked happy. He looked successful. He looked nothing like the boy I'd raised in that small apartment. But he still called when he needed money. "Hey Mom, I know this is a lot to ask, but I could really use a couple $100. Books are expensive, and I had some unexpected costs." I sent him $200. I went without groceries that week, eating rice and canned soup. "Mom, my laptop died, and I need a new one for school. Could you help me out? Maybe 500? I sent him $500. I picked up an extra shift at the nursing home and skipped buying winter boots I desperately needed. He had scholarships, he had loans, and I knew deep down that the Baker family was probably helping him too. But when my son called asking for money, I sent it. Every time, because he was my son. Then, 2 years ago, Samuel called me out of the blue on a Tuesday afternoon. "Hey Mom, I need to talk to you about something." My heart jumped. Maybe he was coming home. Maybe he wanted to visit. "I want to invest in real estate," he said. "Buy a house, build some equity." But my credit is still young, and I'd get better mortgage rates if I had a cosigner. Would you be willing to cosign with me? Would I be willing? Of course I would. This was my son. This was Samuel asking me for help, asking me to be part of his life again. Of course, I said immediately. Of course I'll cosign. We bought a beautiful 3-bedroom house in a good neighborhood just outside New York City. Both our names went on the mortgage. Samuel assured me he'd handle all the payments. Don't worry about a thing, Mom. I've got this. And he did. Every month, like clockwork, the mortgage payment went through. Samuel was responsible. Samuel was doing well. I thought maybe this was a good sign. Maybe he was settling down. Maybe he and Mandy would get married and have children, and I'd finally be a grandmother. Maybe this house meant he wanted me back in his life. Maybe we'd grow close again. I imagined visiting him in that house. Imagined him showing me around, introducing me to his neighbors. Imagined grandchildren running through those rooms while I baked cookies in that kitchen. I was so stupid. That house wasn't about including me. That house was about using me. My credit. My signature. My name on a document so he could get a better deal. But I didn't see it then. I was just happy he needed me for something. If you're still watching this, you know where this is going. And trust me, it gets worse before it gets better. Hit that subscribe button, because what happens next is going to leave you speechless. The way I finally stood up for myself? Some people called me heartless. Others called me a hero. You'll have to decide for yourself. Let me ask you something. Would you co-sign on a house for your child even if you hadn't seen them in months? Even if they only called when they needed money? Drop your answer in the comments. I want to know if I'm the only one who kept giving, even when I was getting nothing back. For the next 2 years, I barely saw Samuel, maybe twice. Once when he and Mandy drove through town and stopped by for an hour. Once when I took the train to New York for his birthday and we had lunch. 2 hours together. That was it. But I told myself it was fine. He was busy building his career. He was working at a prestigious law firm now. He was making something of himself. This was what I wanted for him, wasn't it? This was why I'd worked 3 jobs and sold my mother's necklace and gone without so many things. I just wished he'd call more. I wished he'd come home. I wished I felt like I was still part of his life instead of just a name on a mortgage document. But I pushed those feelings down. I told myself to be grateful. Grateful that he was successful. Grateful that he was happy. Grateful that all my sacrifices had paid off. I didn't know then that Samuel had already decided I didn't fit into his new life. I didn't know that he'd already chosen Mandy's world over me. I didn't know that in just a few months I'd find out about his wedding on Instagram, and my entire world would shatter. I didn't know that the son I'd given everything for had already left me behind. 6 months ago, Samuel called me on a Thursday evening. I was just getting home from my shift at the nursing home. Exhausted, my feet aching. I saw his name on my phone and my heart lifted. He so rarely called anymore. "Hey Mom," he said. I could hear the smile in his voice. "Samuel, how are you, honey?" "I'm good, Mom. Really good. I have some news." He paused. "Mandy and I are engaged." I started crying immediately. Happy tears. Tears of joy. My son was getting married. My Samuel was starting his own family. "Oh, honey, that's wonderful. I'm so happy for you. Congratulations," he laughed. "Thanks, Mom." "Tell me everything," I said, sitting down on my couch, phone pressed to my ear. "When did you propose? How did you do it? Did you get her a ring? Tell me all about it." He told me about proposing at some fancy restaurant in Manhattan, about the ring he'd picked out, about how Mandy cried and said yes. I listened to every word, smiling so hard my face hurt. Then I asked the question that mattered most to me. "When's the wedding? Where are you having it? What can I do to help?" There was a pause, just a brief one, but I noticed it. "We're still figuring out the details, Mom. It might be a small thing, just something intimate. We'll let you know once we have everything planned out." A small thing. Small meant intimate. Small meant family. Small meant me. "Of course," I said. "Just let me know the date as soon as you can so I can request time off work." "Will do, Mom. I should go. Mandy just got home. Love you." Love you too, sweetheart. I hung up and I sat there in my apartment and I cried again. My son was getting married. I was going to see him get married. I was going to be there for the most important day of his life. I started saving money immediately. I had a jar in my kitchen labeled Samuel's wedding that I'd been putting money into for 15 years. It had $3,000 in it. Money I'd scraped together, dollar by dollar, year by year. But I needed more. I needed a new dress. Something nice. Something that would make Samuel proud. I started putting away an extra $20 each week. I went without things. I skipped buying new work shoes, even though mine had holes. I ate cheaper meals. I turned the heat down lower. Every penny I could save went into that jar. I was going to look beautiful at my son's wedding. I was going to fit in. I was going to make sure Samuel wasn't embarrassed of me. The weeks passed. Then a month. I called Samuel to ask about the wedding plans. Still working on it, Mom, he said. You know how these things are. I didn't, actually. I'd gotten married at City Hall with 2 witnesses. But I didn't say that. Do you have a date yet? Even a rough idea? We're looking at sometime in the fall. Maybe October or November. I'll let you know. And where? Are you thinking New York or? Mom, I really have to go. I'll call you soon, okay? He hung up before I could say goodbye. I tried not to worry. Planning a wedding was stressful. I understood that. 2 weeks later, I called again. He didn't answer. I texted, "Hi, honey. Just checking in about the wedding. Do you need any help with planning?" He texted back 3 days later. "Everything's under control. Mandy's handling most of it." I decided to reach out to Mandy directly. I sent her a message on Facebook. "Hi, Mandy. So excited about the wedding. Is there anything I can help with? I'd love to be involved in the planning if you need an extra pair of hands. Let me know." She never responded. I checked Facebook every day for a week. The message showed as seen, but she never replied. I told myself she was busy. She had a demanding job. She was planning a wedding. She probably just forgot to respond. But it stung. The calls became even more sparse after the engagement. I'd call Samuel once a week, and maybe he'd answer once every 3 weeks. When we did talk, it was brief, surface level. He'd ask how I was, I'd ask how he was, and then he'd say he had to go. I kept asking about the wedding. Every single conversation. "Have you picked a venue yet? We're looking at a few places. Do you have a date? Probably November, still finalizing. Can I see Mandy's dress, or help with anything?" Mandy wants everything to be perfect, Mom. She's very particular about the details. Mandy wants everything perfect. I heard that phrase so many times it started to feel like a wall. A polite way of telling me to back off. Then came 2 months before the wedding. Though I didn't know it was 2 months before because no one had told me the actual date yet. I texted Samuel. "Hi, honey. I really need to know the wedding date soon so I can request time off from work. They need advance notice. Can you please send me the details?" An hour later, my phone rang. "Samuel." "Hey, Mom." "Hi. Did you get my text?" "Yeah, about that." I could hear Mandy's voice in the background, saying something I couldn't make out. "The wedding is getting kind of complicated. Mandy's family has a lot of people they need to invite. Venue capacity is becoming an issue." My stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" "Just that we're trying to figure out the guest list and it's getting tight with space." "Samuel?" My voice came out smaller than I intended. "I'm your mother. I'll be there no matter what, right?" There was a pause. A long pause. Too long. "Of course, Mom. Of course you'll be there. I'll send you the details soon, I promise." "When is soon?" "Next week or 2. I have to go, Mom. I'll call you later." He hung up. I sat there holding my phone and I felt something cold settle into my chest. That pause. That terrible, long pause before he answered. Next week came. No details. The week after that, nothing. I texted. I called. I left voicemails. "Samuel, please just tell me when the wedding is. I need to know. Honey, I'm getting worried. Is everything okay? Please call me back." Nothing. And then came that Tuesday night. That terrible Tuesday night, when I was scrolling through Instagram at 11 o'clock and I saw it. Saw Samuel in a tuxedo, saw Mandy in a wedding dress, saw 200 people celebrating. And I wasn't there. Now, sitting in my apartment, Going through those photos again with this new context, everything became horrifyingly clear. I zoomed in on the groomsman photo. I counted at least 8 guys standing with Samuel. His law school friends, probably. Guys I'd never met. Guys he'd known for a few years. I scrolled through more photos. There was Mandy's grandmother, smiling in the front row. There were her aunts and uncles, her cousins. What looked like dozens of extended family members. There were family friends, there were colleagues, there were people from their social circle. The venue was massive. A sprawling vineyard estate with room for hundreds. This wasn't a capacity issue. This wasn't a small, intimate wedding. I looked at the guest list in those photos, and I understood. Capacity wasn't the issue. Space wasn't the problem. I was the problem. My cleaning jobs were the problem. My small apartment with the water-stained ceiling was the problem. My thrift store dresses and my rough hands and my working-class existence were the problem. They didn't want me there. Mandy didn't want me there. Robert and Margaret Baker didn't want me there. And Samuel, my son, the boy I'd sacrificed everything for, he didn't fight for me. He chose them. He chose their world, their money, their status. He chose to exclude me from the most important day of his life because I didn't fit the image they wanted. All those vague answers, all those delays, all those excuses about capacity and Mandy wanting everything perfect, it was all lies. They were hoping I'd just, what? Not notice? Not care? That long pause on the phone when I asked if I'd be there. That pause that made my stomach drop. Samuel was deciding in that moment whether to tell me the truth or keep lying. He chose the lie. I looked at the photos one more time. Samuel looked so happy. His arm around Mandy, surrounded by her family, surrounded by 200 people who belonged in his new life. And I realized something that made me feel both heartbroken and furious. They didn't want me there. And Samuel let it happen. My son, the boy I raised alone, the boy I worked 3 jobs for, the boy I sold my mother's necklace for, the boy I gave my entire life to, he stood in front of 200 people and got married, and he deliberately excluded me. He looked at his life and decided I didn't belong in it. And that decision changed everything. I couldn't sleep that night. At 3 a.m, I got up and went to my closet. I started pulling out old boxes, looking for something, anything to make sense of this pain. I found a box labeled Samuel, School Years. Inside were letters. Dozens of them. Letters Samuel had written to me over the years. The first one was in crayon, 3rd grade. Dear Mom, thank you for working so hard. When I grow up, I'm gonna take care of you. Love, Samuel. Another from middle school. You're the best mom in the world. I'm gonna make you so proud. High school. You're invited to every important day of my life forever. You're my hero. I read that line again, every important day of my life forever. I found photos too, me holding baby Samuel. His first day of school. Graduations, award ceremonies. In every single photo I was beaming. And in every photo, young Samuel looked at me like I hung the moon. When did that change? When did I become someone to hide? The sun came up. I was still on the floor surrounded by letters and photos. And suddenly, everything became clear. I gave Samuel everything. My youth, my health, my money, my entire life. And the moment he got those opportunities, he left me behind. Worse, he was ashamed of me. I stood up, made coffee, got dressed, and at 9 o'clock, I called the mortgage company. Hi, I'm calling about the property at 247 Maple Street. My name is Cecile T. Mattis. I'm a co-signer and co-owner. I'd like to discuss my options. They explained everything. Because my name was on the mortgage, I could force a sale. Samuel would have to comply. I called a real estate agent that afternoon. By evening, the house was listed, priced to sell quickly. 3 days later, my phone rang. Samuel, what the hell are you doing? The house is for sale. I'm selling it, I said calmly. You can't do that. Actually, I can. My name is on the mortgage. This is my home. Mandy and I live here. You should have thought about that before you got married without inviting me. Silence. I saw the photos, Samuel, on Instagram. Beautiful wedding, 200 guests, but not me. Mom, I can explain. Trop, no. You don't get to explain this away. You lied to me for months. You told me it was small. He told me capacity was an issue. All lies. There were 200 people there, but not your mother. Not the woman who worked 3 jobs so you could have this life. It wasn't. You chose Mandy's world over me. You chose to be ashamed of where you came from. You chose to erase me. And that's your right. But I get to make a choice now, too. If you're watching this, and you've ever had to stand up for yourself against someone you love, hit that subscribe button. Because what happened next tested every ounce of strength I had left. Let me ask you, if your child excluded you from their wedding, would you have done what I did? Or would you have forgiven them? Drop your answer in the comments. The house sells in 2 weeks. I continued. I've accepted an offer. You'll get your half of the equity. Consider it your inheritance because you're getting nothing else from me. Mom, please. Where are we supposed to live? Maybe Mandy's parents can help. They have that Hampton summer home, right? Robert and Margaret are good at building futures for you. They can build you a new housing situation too. This isn't fair. Fair? You want to talk about fair? Was it fair that I found out about your wedding on Instagram? Silence. I thought so. I'm sorry, he whispered. Mom, I'm so sorry. Sorry doesn't change anything. Sorry doesn't give me back the moment I should have had watching my son get married. Sorry doesn't erase the fact that you were ashamed of me. I wasn't. Yes, you were. You were ashamed of your working-class mother. Ashamed of the woman who cleaned toilets so you could wear nice clothes. And I'm done being ashamed of myself to make you comfortable. Mom, please don't sell the house. The house is sold. You have 2 weeks to move out. I love you, Mom. I love you too, Samuel. I always will. But I also love myself. And I won't let you treat me like I'm something to be ashamed of. Not anymore. I hung up. I sat in my apartment and looked at the letters still scattered on my floor. And I felt something I hadn't felt in a very long time. I felt free. 2 days later, there was a knock on my apartment door. I looked through the peephole and saw Samuel standing there. He looked tired, stressed. His hair was messy like he'd been running his hands through it. And standing next to him, arms crossed, looking irritated to be in my building, was Mandy. I opened the door. Mom, Samuel said, can we come in? We need to talk about this rationally. I stepped aside and let them in. They stood in my small living room, Mandy looking around with that same expression she'd had the first time she visited, like she was cataloging everything that was wrong with my life. Rationally, I said, closing the door. You want to talk about this rationally? Okay, let's be rational. You got married and didn't invite me. Explain that rationally. Samuel opened his mouth, but Mandy stepped forward first. Mrs. Matz, the wedding was very complicated. We had to make difficult choices about the guest list. It wasn't personal. I looked at her. Really looked at her. How many people were at the wedding? She blinked. I don't see how that's. How many? That's not really. 200? 250? I kept my voice steady, because I counted at least 200 people in those Instagram photos. So out of 250 guests, you couldn't find room for one more? You couldn't find room for the groom's mother? Mandy's jaw tightened. It wasn't about room. Then what was it about? Samuel stepped between us. Mom, please, you don't understand what it's like. Mandy's family. They have expectations. They have standards. The words hung in the air. I felt them like a physical blow. And I don't meet those standards, I said quietly. He didn't answer. He just stood there, looking at the floor. Say it, Samuel. Say what you really mean. It's not like that. Then what is it like? Explain it to me. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you were ashamed of me. You stopped talking about me to your friends. You stopped bringing Mandy around after that one Christmas. You stopped mentioning where you came from. Why? His face crumpled. Because I needed them to accept me. Robert Baker is a senior partner at one of the best law firms in the country. One word from him and my entire career is set. I couldn't. He stopped, ran his hands through his hair. I couldn't risk it. Risk what? Risk them knowing. He stopped again. Say it. Risk them knowing my mother cleansed toilets for a living, he whispered. There it was. The truth. Finally. I waited for him to take it back. to say that's not what he meant, to deny it. But he didn't. He just stood there with tears in his eyes, and he didn't deny it. That's what broke my heart most of all. Mandy put her hand on his arm. This is ridiculous. The house was a gift, Samuel. We bought it to give your mother financial security, and now she's... A gift. I cut her off. Sweetheart, that house was never a gift. Samuel needed my credit to get better mortgage rates. That's why my name is on it. It was a transaction, a business deal, and now I'm ending it. You can't just... Yes, I can. And I did. The house sells in 2 weeks. I've already accepted an offer. Samuel will get his half of the equity. Samuel looked up. Half? Mom, that's our home. You'll get half. Consider it your inheritance, because you're not getting anything else from me. If you've made it this far in this story, I need you to do something for me. Hit that subscribe button, because what I'm about to tell you is the hardest thing I've ever had to say to my son. And I need you to hear it. I need someone to understand why I had to do this. Mom, please. Samuel's voice cracked. We can work this out. Just give us time. Time? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. I've given you 28 years, Samuel. I gave you my entire life. Do you know what I dreamed about for 28 years? I dreamed about your wedding. I dreamed about helping you pick out flowers. I dreamed about crying during your vows. I dreamed about dancing with you at the reception. I walked to my kitchen and pulled out the jar. The jar labeled Samuel's wedding in my handwriting. I brought it back and held it up. Do you see this? I've been saving money in this jar for 15 years. 15 years, Samuel. $3,000. $1 here, $5 there, whenever I could spare it. Do you know how many meals I skipped to put money in this jar? How many times I went without heat in the winter? How many pairs of shoes I didn't buy? He was crying now. Really crying. Mom, I didn't know. You didn't know because you stopped asking. You stopped caring. You got so busy climbing into Mandy's world that you forgot about the woman who made that climb possible. That's not fair. Fair? My voice rose. You want to talk about fair? Why did I have to find out about your wedding on Instagram, Samuel? Why didn't you call me? Why didn't you tell me to my face that you didn't want your working-class mother at your fancy wedding? I'm sorry. He was sobbing now. Mom, I'm so sorry. I was weak. I was stupid. I was wrong. I know I was wrong. You were my whole world, I said, and my voice broke. You were everything to me, and I wasn't even worth a phone call. Mandy tugged on Samuel's arm. Come on, we're not getting anywhere with this. She's being unreasonable. But Samuel didn't move. He just stood there staring at me with tears streaming down his face. And for a second, just a second, I saw my little boy again. The one who used to curl up next to me on the couch. The one who wrote me letters promising I'd always be part of his life. The one who looked at me like I was his hero. I love you, Mom, he whispered. I love you too, I said. I always will. But I also love myself. And I won't let you treat me like I'm something to be ashamed of. Not anymore. What do you want me to do? I want you to leave. And I want you to figure out who you are. Are you the boy who wrote me those letters? The boy who promised I'd be invited to every important day of his life? Or are you the man who got married in front of 200 people and deliberately excluded his mother? Lam. Because right now, Samuel, I don't recognize you. I look at you, and I don't see my son anymore. I see a stranger who values status over family, who values money over loyalty, who values fitting in over the woman who sacrificed everything for him. Let me ask you something before I finish this story. Have you ever had to cut someone off, even someone you love, because they kept hurting you? Was it the right choice, or do you regret it? Drop your answer in the comments, because what I did next, I'll never regret. But I need to know I'm not alone in making this kind of choice. Please, Samuel begged, don't do this. It's already done. Mandy pulled harder on his arm. Samuel, let's go. She's made up her mind. This time, he let her lead him to the door. But at the threshold he turned back. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry. I know you are, but sorry doesn't change what you did. Sorry doesn't give me back what you took from me. They left. The door closed, and I stood in my apartment. My small, modest apartment with its water-stained ceiling and second-hand furniture, and I felt something wash over me. Freedom. For the first time in 28 years, I wasn't carrying the weight of someone else's dreams. I wasn't sacrificing myself for someone else's future. I was just me. Cecile, a woman who had given everything and finally chose herself. The house sold 3 weeks later. My half came to $180,000. The first thing I did was quit all 3 of my jobs. All of them. I walked into each one and gave my notice. After 26 years of cleaning offices and doing laundry and working myself into the ground, I was done. The second thing I did was something I never thought I'd do in my entire life. I took $20,000 and I went to Europe. By myself for an entire month. I went to Paris, and I sat in cafes and ate croissants and watched people. I went to Rome and I saw the Colosseum and the Sistine Chapel, and I cried at the beauty of it. I went to Barcelona and I walked through Gaudi's buildings and I felt like I was in a dream. I ate good food. I bought nice clothes. Not expensive clothes, but nice ones. New ones. Ones that fit properly and didn't come from a thrift store. I stayed in decent hotels. Nothing fancy but clean and comfortable. And every single morning I woke up and I felt like a person again. Not just a mother. Not just a worker. Just Cecile. When I came back, I used some of the money to move into a nicer apartment. Still a 1-bedroom, I didn't need more, but in a better neighborhood with a view of a park. I could sit by my window and watch the trees change with the seasons. I could see children playing. I could see people walking their dogs. I could see life happening, and I was finally part of it instead of just watching from the outside. I got a part-time job at a bookstore. I didn't need to work. I had enough money to live on for years if I was careful, but I wanted to work. Just not like before. Not until I broke. Not until my hands bled and my back screamed and my soul felt empty. I worked 20 hours a week at a beautiful independent bookstore. I recommended books to customers. I organized shelves. I drank coffee and talked to interesting people. And I came home with enough energy to actually enjoy my life. Samuel sent texts occasionally. Mom, can we talk? Mom, I miss you. Mom, please. I didn't respond. Not because I didn't love him, I did. I always would. But because I'd spent 28 years being available whenever he needed me, and he'd spent the last few years being unavailable whenever I needed him. It was time for him to sit with that. I heard through a mutual acquaintance, someone from the old neighborhood, that Samuel and Mandy were struggling. I didn't ask for details. I didn't want to know. Their marriage, their problems, their life, none of it was my concern anymore. And the strangest thing? I didn't care. I thought I would. I thought I'd feel guilty or sad, but I didn't. I felt nothing except relief that it wasn't my problem to fix. I learned something in those 6 months after Samuel's wedding. I learned that sometimes the people you sacrifice everything for forget what you gave up. They get so used to you giving that they forget you're a person who needs things too. They forget that you have limits. They forget that love isn't supposed to be one-sided. But more importantly, I learned that you don't have to forget what you're worth just because someone else did. You don't have to keep giving to people who only take. You don't have to set yourself on fire to keep other people warm. For 28 years I was Samuel's mother first and Cecile second. I was the person who worked 3 jobs, the person who went without, the person who sacrificed. And I was proud of that. I was proud of what I did for my son. But I'm also proud of what I did for myself. I'm proud that I finally said enough. I'm proud that I chose my own dignity over his comfort. I'm proud that I walked away from someone who treated me like I was dispensable. Samuel is 30 years old now. He's a grown man. He made his choices, and I made mine. And that wedding money jar? The one with $3,000 I'd saved for 15 years? I spent it on myself. Every single dollar. I bought myself a beautiful coat. I got my hair done professionally for the first time in my life. I went to nice restaurants. I saw shows. I did things I'd always dreamed about but never thought I deserved. Because I do deserve it. I deserved to be at my son's wedding. I deserved honesty and respect and basic human decency. And when I didn't get those things, I deserved to choose myself. Some people called me heartless. Some people said a mother should always forgive. Some people said I was punishing Samuel too harshly. But you know what? Those people didn't work 3 jobs for 26 years. Those people didn't sell their mother's pearls and their wedding ring. Those people didn't find out about their child's wedding on Instagram, so their opinions don't matter to me. What matters is that I'm free. I'm finally beautifully, peacefully free. And that's worth more than any house, more than any wedding, more than any relationship with someone who is ashamed of me. I'm 67 years old. I spent most of my life giving. Now I'm taking time for myself, taking care of myself, taking back the life I put on hold for someone who didn't appreciate it. And I've never been happier.